tonight I have my brother here, Mr. L Train, Lionel Rogers. This is a good brother. Got a lot of information. We're gonna talk about a lot of things that hopefully that will resonate with everybody, not just us because we two brothers, but for the white man, the Hispanic man, the Asian man, and the like. I mean, we try to touch everybody. This is not just for us, but we just want to touch everybody. And I want to say this is being Mental Health Awareness Month, that if there's something that you're going through right now, reach out to a counselor, a therapist, call the 1-800 numbers, whatever reference out there. And at the end of this video, I'm gonna leave a few things for you too, for a few numbers, a few references for you, because we want everybody to get help. All right.
Well said, my brother. Well said. Yes, sir. Here we go. Yes. Originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. They call it the Big Easy. Many other names they call it, by the way. The Big Easy is, I guess, the more pleasurable, more world-known nickname for it. But yeah, man, we came up here about 30 days after Hurricane Katrina. And after living here, decided to make Arlington home. My wife's relatives have been living out here for years, man. And we loved the environment. Everything worked out for us. It was conducive. We did have aspirations to go back to New Orleans once we got home, straight due to losing it as a result of the hurricane. But it wasn't meant to be. God seen otherwise, and he brought us here and determined to tell us, hey, look, Arlington, Texas is going to be your home. And shortly thereafter, our family started, and now we have 3 beautiful children, thank God, and life is good. And on top of that, I got a chance to meet a brother like yourself, man. That has been an extra blessing to me and me and my family's life. So I'm grateful for that. So here we are, 2020, almost 15 years later, ready to rock and roll. Keep it moving like soul to soul. Yes, sir.
So Hurricane Katrina was how many years ago?
Almost 15, August 29, 2005.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
And so COVID-19. So you're involved in 2 life-altering, changing events.
Yes.
So
yes.
How was that? I mean, so how's that Katrina to this today?
Katrina was a definite life changer. It definitely caused a shake-up in the normal way you conduct the business, the normal flow of life. It just disrupted a lot of things because it caused us to shift the way we flowed with our everyday goings and comings. Thus meaning that the way we looked at where we were in our comfort zones, now we had to accept some of the discomfort in a new environment in order to understand that, will it be home, ? Or will it be temporary? Okay. So it was more psychological than anything else. Of course, as you get older and you move around, and I can speak for myself personally, having lived in a few other states along the way prior to, Katrina, helped me out in that transition as far as being able to migrate from one place to another and to call a place home once you get settled. And so for me, it was relatively easy, but maybe wasn't so for my wife at that time. But together, of course, thank God, we held on to each other, and we understood that with faith and time and patience that we'll make it through this. And that's where we are today, thankfully. And as I look back at that moment in time, I look back on how the struggles that occurred, the going back and forth to Louisiana, sometimes dealing with the business of the home, etc., dealing with the transitions of making life as easy as possible while we're here, coupled with the fact that we had to deal with the uncertainty of back home, at least for, like I say, all betterment of 3 years or so. And then finally, like I said, the realization set in, and we accepted the fact that when business didn't go accordingly to the way we see fit, that we just had to accept that, hey, look, Arlington, Texas is going to be home, make the best out of it. And like I said, our family started blossoming, and here we are today, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you see any similarities as far as people? In that case, we were dealing with New Orleans, right? We dealing with the state of Louisiana.
Yes.
And now we're dealing with the whole world, so to speak, you know,
Yeah.
has been affected by COVID-19.
Yes.
Did that conjure up any feelings that had not been like dealt with, or did it take you back some? Or what happened? I mean, it's like your mind stayed in emotional state going through this.
Well, going back to Katrina, you know, realizing that that whole Gulf Coast region, from the inner workings of the Florida Panhandle all the way through to New Orleans and beyond, coming towards Texas,
Okay.
you know, so that Gulf Coast region in itself was affected. Of course, New Orleans being the major city in that region, obviously got more talk and more earplay as well as video play, etc., on how things went about, because it was the major city that got hit in that area. But as far as the feelings are concerned, one feeling that stood out with Katrina that I hadn't felt thus far, and probably never will be, with the COVID-19 pandemic, is separation anxiety.
Oh, okay.
I can't speak enough about how that has affected not only my family, but I'm pretty sure loads of families out there, individuals, etc., that have been that were impacted by that at that particular moment in history. And because here you're going from a situation of just living every day, understanding that natural disasters happen all over the world, but in your mind, you're thinking, like, and I'm pretty sure like so many other people, that one day I'll be back. But as the unfortunate momentum of the disaster kept building and building and building, the levees breaking eventually. You know, you hear this, you hear that, and then the water inundating all over, if I'm not mistaken, over 80% or at 80% capacity of the city, which the city was already in itself 6 feet below sea level. In and of itself, that area, it kind of left you wondering, okay, as time passed, when will things eventually come back to a state of normalcy? But obviously it never really did in the time frame that many thought, because people, as they said, in that region have always had scares of storms coming through, that this is going to be the big one, this, that, and the other. So in people's minds, and of course I can't speak for everybody, that's unfair to do, but in the general mindset of people who live in that region, that, okay, this will pass and we'll be eventually come back in maybe a month or two and go back to life as it was. But it was very devastating, as we all know. And again, history speaks for that. So that separation anxiety came along when you started realizing that, hey, look, mom is now in Atlanta with one of my brothers. Will I see her next weekend like I promised? I don't think so. Little sister is up in, just say, safekeeping. She's in North Dakota. Will I get a chance to reach out and see her like I want to? I don't think so. So you had to deal with that separate, and it's still hard. It's not as hard as it was. Time has a way. And with faith and with togetherness, with love, with family, reaching out, and of course, as technology has continued to advance since 2005, obviously has made life easier for people to stay in contact with each other. And so that's where we are. But with COVID-19, to kind of find a similarity, I would have to say that the humility of what we're dealing with in regards to this, the acceptance of the fact that There's certain things that you just can't do. You can do, but really, realistically speaking, you can't do. The loss, and when I mean the loss, like people, so many people have lost their jobs. You know, we had to deal with that with Katrina. You know, the fact that, okay, well, I have to shift my income, or I have to let go of my pride and apply for food stamps for some people to understand and to just accept the fact that I do need help or a handout from someone. Whereas before this all occurred, I didn't have to worry about that. I was living, as they say, high on the hog, doing me, taking care of me, making this, making that. But reality sets in and you realize that, hey, look, we're all in one boat now. We're all in one family, and you have to empathize with people when they are going through something and not be so quick to judge or assume or think that even though you may be in dire straits even before COVID-19, hey, look, there's other people too for the shakeup of circumstances that we have no quote unquote control over, that, hey, listen, I have to be amongst that number as well.
You said that before Katrina, you were living this way, you were living high on the hog, doing you, and now because of it, you have to do those things that you never thought you have to do, right? And I believe that speaks to everybody right now. I think that what you said is point, and it speaks to everybody and everybody's situation. Because if you see, you know, you watching the news and you see people protest, protesting, and they're all in front of the capitals with their guns, with their signs, even people talking to the media, saying that they don't want the handouts, and they want to go back to work, and they want to do this. You know, they feel like their freedoms is being taken from them, right? And so you just gave an insight for those people, in a sense, having to be in that situation to receive that quote unquote the handout, but it's to help you. And why do you think that some people see it as less than help, and they see it as a curse or a burden or a to make them feel less? In other words, what do you feel about that?
I guess one word comes to mind is outside of humility and humbling oneself to circumstances that occur in our lives, I would say a lack of groundedness.
Okay.
A lack of groundedness, meaning we all have to understand in this life there's going to be some things, quite frankly speaking, that we're not going to be able to control, and we're not going to ever have control over. Because like I like to tell people who I meet, when I think about this life we live and how, from a spiritual perspective, there's only certain things and limitations that we have, and things that are wonderment, that will continue to be a wonder to us as human beings, for the simple fact that when we look out at night at the moon, there's no man on the face or woman on the face of the earth that can lay claim to that. I allowed the moon to rise at X hour. Or when we see that wondrous sun in the daytime, that I allowed that sun to rise up into the sky to come out at that certain hour. Can't no man or woman, can't any man or woman lay claim to that. So in understanding that part of life, outside of many other things that happen in our lives as we live on a day-to-day basis, we have to understand that and accept that fragility, accept that part of where we are as human beings, and never forget it. Because if we do, then are we going to lead ourselves into more peril and more heartbreak And when, again, when we're so used to doing us or doing me, that we forget that no matter what we're dealing with, there's forces out there that are greater than us. I like to say more positive than negative. But of course, me and you both know, being brothers of faith, spiritually inclined, that there's forces of evil out there too that tempt us, that cause us to think this way and that way. So I think if we learn to appreciate what true humility is when things happen to us and accept that, not as a beat down or a lack thereof, let our pride go, be humble in things that come to us and gracious and thankful, and also understand that the importance of being grounded throughout it all. And I think once we can understand those things and we incorporate those things in our lives as individuals, because we're all different, but learn to just kind of keep those things in the midst of our being, then I think that we'll be better off.
Do you think the media is kind of sensationalizing some of those protests, or do you feel like what we see is what's happening, is what really going on?
I think the media tends to sensationalize things, and sometimes they bombard us, for the good or for the bad, with information overload. And depending on where you are, like you mentioned, this month is Mental Health Month. People are already, generally speaking, people are already in a fragile state of being as it is, even pre-COVID-19. Just because of life in and of itself. And I think we need to never forget that and understand that mental health, as well as physical well-being, social well-being, all those things are incorporated into who we are as individuals. And we can never forget that or take that for granted. And when you have people that are constantly bombarding us with information overload and sensationalizing certain things that go on, everybody is not equipped to deal with that and to compartmentalize those subject areas accordingly, and then get up that day, whether they work in the morning shift at their jobs or the evening shift or the overnight shift, and go about their business accordingly, even if they're not working, but just once they step out into the public arena and try to live accordingly in as quote unquote a normal state of being as possible. Because the mind is convoluted with so much to deal with. And then the skepticism takes hold, and on and on and on and on. And people become fragile, and then people become trigger happy. Some people physically with guns, or rather be with their mouths, on whatever means. So we have to be cautious.